Hello, hello! Today we're modeling a brand new Splatoon hairstyle from ground zero for my Inksona. My name is Miui, also known as Popato in-game, and I'd like to talk to you about some of my thought process during modeling this hair in Blender. Disclaimer! This is meant as some sort of vlog as well as a random tip video if you ever come across modeling in Blender too. And I know, my French accent is quite strong sometimes, so there are subtitles to help with the video. Même si tu parles en français, il y en aura en français. Donc, bon visionnage, hope you enjoy. First of all, going to this project, I wanted to practice sculpting to have better understanding of the available tools in Blender. In retrospect, this was barely efficient and the most time-consuming part of the process, compared to like box modeling with a couple of drawings and a ref sheet. But you do what you gotta do to learn the software! So I followed CGBoost tutorial by Zach Reinhardt, link in the description, where they use the lasso trim tool in join mode in order to create many shapes composing their creature, then move the parts in the space, and then remeshed and sculpted them. Easy instructions, that's what I did for the banks at the front before I got the idea of recording the modeling. In time-lapses, I kept seeing these magic grids which look super useful, but I couldn't put a word on how to search for them. I was practically 1 hour old since I knew remeshing was an essential part of sculpting. So here's how you do it. You press R to pick a voxel sample size, and it will determine how many faces you have. Then you press Ctrl R to voxel remesh. And voila! You get higher res sculpting. It's how I done the smoother hair part. Here I used a curve with a bevel to make a tiny cowlick or ahoge. I figured it was just a simple noodle with some twist to it. Curves are pretty intuitive. Alt S for the thickness, Ctrl T for the twist, or you could just use the tool on the left. Oh, and here I'm duplicating those hair parts because I want to do some sneaky little trickery. You know how in 2D character designs can get inconsistent to be more aesthetic and fit the camera view? Like in this famous example of Jenny in the Teenage Robot, look at those pigtails. I kept those parts separate to ease editing those later. And since the hair is asymmetrical, they need a little bit of pushing in and out. Usually people would do it, but I'm able to figure out my way out of the design because they're Masona that I drew dozens of times since the game came out. However, the hair was never a consistent part of my drawings, so it was one of my reasons to model this hairstyle. Maybe I'll do a long-haired version 1 in the future, but that won't be in the video. Short hair is far more easy to make, and I'm gonna say, this is why we don't have more long hairstyles in the game. They are more prone to clipping into the player too. The Sona is meant to be quite of a messy character and all over the place, so that's why there are bangs everywhere. The front ones are also meant to be uneven and kind of jagged, but I don't know if that came across that well. Anyways, if it was any other person's hair, I'd rather have two sketches of the front and the side view from the get-go, so I waste less time refining the 3D space. Great topology time! Gotta have some proper edge flow and less spaces if I don't want my laptop to. For more details, I'm using the B-Surface add-on, which comes by default with Blender, but you have to enable it at first, at least in 4.0. It's an add-on where you draw edge loops with the annotation tool projected on the surface, and then the plugin creates geometry out of thin air. That's so cool! It's definitely a perk from sculpting. There they are the regular old modifiers, the Solidify modifier for the bangs, and the shrink wrap for the rest. I'm not sure if you're supposed to model with the subsurface modifier on or not, since the base model can greatly vary if you're lower poly like me. I'm just putting the minimal amount of loops to get the shape across. All I have to say is that circular shapes scare me, but I'm more than happy with what I got. Around here, I got some auto-merge mishaps, unfortunately. I wasn't careful enough, and it's not the last time that it will happen. There, I painted some facets and used the pose bone in sculpting mode in order to preview how the banks would move, is to check if I put enough geometry or not. Here I'm using weight paint to factor in my solidify modifier. It will change how thick is the sculpt and create a rim around it. I'm trying to match the poly density of the game hair that I like to use a lot, but to be frank, I haven't compared the actual poly count, so that's fun. What's funny about this piece of hair is that I did not properly count my vertices while using B-Surface, so I ended up having this funky sparage edge flow that I obsessed over, which is really annoying for editing. I edited the mesh off camera since I figured it won't be that interesting to look at. I basically just use a knife tool to make proper edge rings. Now comes the scary part of fusing the meshes together. It looks hardly reversible, so that's why I'm putting basic seams so I can still have some separation between the parts. I wasn't sure how the right tentacle would move with the scalp, because at the beginning I thought I would fuse it all together. Those yellow annotations are here to note where the mesh actually doesn't meet. There, I'm just playing with materials since I'm finished with the base mesh, and I love to have some fun, and look at this translucent gummy hair. Onto the rigging part. I copied over the game amateur and edited it to match the hairstyle. I don't know why the bones are all pointy and rolled those ways, but it's just how Game Engine works sometimes, I guess. There are some cases where bones pointing forwards are useful, but them following the mesh is far more easy to animate and visualize in Blender, for me at least. There, I'm adding the bones, scalar A and scalar B, which are used to tone down the bumpiness of the head when the player character is wearing any headgear to avoid clipping. I often found it annoying when my characters wear headphones which seemingly wouldn't clip, but the hair would still go poof and look bald. And for the two hair flicks, I use shape keys in order to fit the hair when it's flipped. UV unwrapping hair. The UV squares add-on really helps a ton, but the UV squares add-on makes that your UVs are squares, or at least straight. Not like me. Straightening your UVs may stretch them a little bit, but they really help to have less texture distortion when you have good edge flow. It also saves tons of space. My laptop loves to crash during UV editing, I don't know why. Also, curse these faces for randomly detaching when I'm not looking. I separated the sucker to make it bigger and have more definition, but I could have just scaled it in the island. Whoops. When packing the islands, I try to keep in mind which islands have ink colors and which don't. It helps having less material overlaps and bleeding at lower resolutions. Nowadays you can get away with a lot of bad practices with higher computer power. I like optimizing. It's like a puzzle to make your art more accessible to lower-end PCs and lightning fast for higher-end ones. With the retopo finished, this is the part where we refine. Gotta make a high detail model in order to bake its details into the first one we made. It's the way Splatoon does it, and it does save a lot of rendering time. But the reflections do look better on higher res model. This is where the edge creases I put earlier come in handy. My laptop was a freaking Airbus at this stage. This is like some baby crap. I don't know how I could ever render a scene with this thing. Thanks to the multi-res modifier, you can make a normal map with just a click of a button. I just wish that I could have used it. I dared to edit the crease and it all gone wrong! The more I tried to edit and fix it, the more it was worse. And I tried to look into forums to fix it, and I couldn't just do it. Hey, I discovered the multi-res eraser. But my poor model! No! I couldn't save it. I couldn't undo all the way, and I didn't have a backup save file with the scope untouched. It was doomed to be pointy. I tried so hard to look for a solution. So, I fucking look at this. I resigned, and I punched a hole in it. I tried to stitch the make back together with another version I had, without the sculpting, but I couldn't do it, and decided it was time to sleep. After our sleep, I decided to F it and have a bunch of triangles in the goal. This is why you should save incrementally your projects, and still, I didn't do much. Then, for the rest of my model, I proceeded to not use the multi-res modifier at all, even knowing why it went wrong, because I was just that traumatized. By ditching the modifier, I get to add geometry where I want, but I don't get that one-click normal map anymore. And you're gonna see why it matters. Only psychos would edit normal maps manually. It's me, I am a psycho! It's definitely not that menacing once you understand how these maps work. And I had a first understanding of it, but still managed halfway throughout exploring. How they work is that each channel is assigned one axis of the face. The channels RGB go with the XYZ channel respectively. If you color a face redder, it will sort of rotate towards the face positive x-axis, and with less red, the negative x-axis. You can tell which color go with which axis thanks to the gizmo on the top right. So, once you understand this, it becomes very easy to paint over Blender's very good baked maps. Like a dumbass, I kept overwriting my painted maps with baked ones, which made me redo so many times my maps off camera. Saving the file is just hard, man. To bake normal maps, you have to do it in Cycles Edging, tick Selected to active, and the extra step I took here is that I manually added a cage. Tutorial in the description. So, I bake my maps one piece at a time. Once the normal maps are finished, onto the actual texturing! The tentacle patterns! Yippee! I plotted them in 2K, which is really unusual for this game, but since I might render close-ups, I figured it would be better to have higher-res textures. Looking back, I might be able to get away with no transparency by filling the background white and inverting the texture, but oh well. So, the node setup we have here at first. We have 3 first level inputs, the ink color, the pattern, and the gradient. In order to color the texture from black, I can use the mix color node in add fusion mode. Thank you, digital drawing knowledge. If the texture was white, you could use the same node in multiply mode. In order to overlay those textures on top of each other, I took both their alpha channels and added them together in the math node. Then I use the same addition to add the ink color back in, and tada! Look at this beautiful whooper! That way we also got a free team color map that the game uses. All there is to do is to bake it later. At the time, I didn't want to use this texture for personal renders, but in order to imitate the game's art style, I had to add the tint in the albedo. Most notably the red over the tentacles and lightning around the bangs. Then the albedo grew on me, and I loved changing the colors towards ink colors that we didn't see in game, like red, white, and black. I felt very powerful. You can't see it here yet, but I had another Blender instance open all along with the default Inkling Girl hairstyle, probably shaded with all its textures. I use it to copy colors over because the reference I'm using on the right can be quite atypical. Thanks to that one person in the model source forum I used for sharing their node setup. It's surprisingly simple and high fidelity compared to what I was using before. I'm making this transmission map in another software called Paint.net, but you can use any other software of your liking. It's just that this one is easy to boot compared to Krita. I made a new jitter brush with a new texture, which is an oval with a translucent hole inside. Maybe I should have used another image layer for this texture, but who got time for that? It was definitely satisfying to just brush over the model without thinking much and get improvement very fast. Then, onto the emission map, which I based over the transmission one. Mix modes on the brushes are a real lifesaver. I also love turning off the options occlude, backface culling, and normal file off in order to paint through the mesh. I just wish there was a single button that did it all at the top. Nothing much to say here, but we're almost done. I couldn't believe it and expected a new backward thing to do and pop up. But nope! The texturing was the final step to greatness. Here we have a THC map, which is a thickness map, but I'm not really sure how it's used or behaves, so I just copied over and what I saw without thinking much. Can't close off this session without the iconic Popa range. I set aside the game-like material for the more high-quality one, so there we go. The whole modeling process took over 30 hours overall, without the overtime hours I took to fix dumb things like the hole in the sculpt or even this video that I did without recording. If I had to, I really can't price this by the hour because I'm sure that the price will be so expensive. But I'm sure next time that I model hair in this style, it will be far more shorter, since I took so many steps and I went at cruising speed. Render time! Import FBXs, snap their roots into the player, rename a bunch of vertex groups, tinker some material around, import the eyebrows because we forgot about them, and we are almost done. now we're gonna sort through this hedgehog to put them. If you're this far off into the video, I can reveal to you that I was into this 6 hours into the session at 3 AM, and I was not about to give up due to some spiky bones when I was this close to finishing. I came up with this pose because I wanted to have a plushie or a pillow sitting on top of my head. I say on top, not below. And bless this HDRI called the Artist Workshop. This is where I live. This is my hobby hole, for real, for real. Here I'm deforming the squid with a simple deform modifier, until I wanted more control and used a lattice. Now I'm doing final adjustments to my squid, and I almost forgot about the backlight, which I feel like it's almost obligatory for any renders. It's a spot that's tracking toward the camera, behind the sauna but slightly offset. I turned on the ambient occlusion and bloom as you should, and added some depth of field to blur the HDRI. After rendering, I edited the picture a bit in Paint.net, and here is the result. I'm really happy with what I got. I can't wait to use this as a reference when I don't know how to draw my hair. I have 2 armatures and materials for the model, in case I ever manage to mod it into the game, which is pretty unlikely, but I can't wait to use it in future renders. Low-key, I hope to model my own Inkling body and face, but that seems like a big task that I'm not ready to tackle on yet. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I wish you a very good day. Later!